The Truck Series waited 2 extra days to get the green flag at Martinsville. It was a long wait, but for one driver, it was well worth it as he claimed the victory. Mark Martin became the 8th winner in 8 races this season as he picked up his 2nd victory at Martinsville and the 32nd of his career in a race that Rusty Wallace dominated. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway opens for practice in preparation for the Indy 500. Will Juan Montoya set the pace in his first trip to the Brickyard? The NHRA was at the new strip in Vegas. Did John Force pick up his 2nd win of the season? And did Kenny Bernstein pick up his 1st win since 1998? RPM tonight, next.
Going green, this time 5, going green, this time 5. Bring them down.
Hello everyone, I'm John Kernan. Welcome to RPM Tonight. Saturday's consistent rain showers forced NASCAR to postpone the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race to Monday morning. This time, Mother Nature cooperated as the drivers took to the track on a picture-perfect day. We pick up the action on lap 172. The pole sitter Mike Wallace was running up front in the 2 truck chased by Jack Sprague, but Bobby Hamilton had other ideas. He looks to the outside of Wallace, trying to make the move for the lead, but Wallace, who's already won twice this year, will hold him off. Hamilton had taken the lead at the start of the race and was anxious to get it back. He still tries to find a rear wound Wallace going into turn 3. Wasn't there. Just like Sunday's Cup race, a lot of on-track action. Kenny Schrader drives through a crash right there. We go on board now with Wallace, and Hamilton finally makes the move around on the outside to take over the top spot heading into 3. At Martinsville, the crew members usually get to keep pretty busy, and Terry Cook's crew, no exception. They had to rip the front air dam off the truck, and that should help keep the brakes cool. As the laps wore down, everybody was looking to make up at least another position, and Dennis Setzer, no exception. He tried to make the move around Jack Sprague for 3rd, didn't do it. Then with 3 to go, Steve Grissom had worked his way from the back of the pack to challenge Setzer for the 4th spot. He could not make the pass. Meanwhile, up front, Hamilton had pulled away to a sizable lead as he took the white flag, and Bobby, who owns Joe Ruttman's Truck 2, cruised the final lap to the checkered flag for his 1st victory in the series. Martinsville marked the 14th Truck Series star for Hamilton. He's won a couple of poles in that series and finished in the top 5 3 times, but in half of his Truck Series races, he wasn't running at the end. Well, he was today, and Bobby Hamilton came away with the win.
Monday's always been a pretty good day for me, especially after rainouts, things like that. So, the truck was just good all day. Goodyear had excellent tire here. Joey Arrington motor was awesome in that thing. Of course, Dodge, with all their technology and all the way they're doing in the sport right now, that was a big help. When your truck was real good and you could use a lot of racetrack, that enables you to move around, you know, and we could run high, low. I even have my right wheels in the asphalt up there some. So, you know, the truck, this place is really easy to overdrive, and if you get out front and can get you a good rhythm going and back off early and not use the brakes, it helps the traffic a lot.
Mike Wallace's 2nd place finish allowed him to add to his point lead in the Truck Series. Now leads Andy Houston by 59 points. Jack Sprague finished behind Wallace in the 3rd spot. Then it was Dennis Setzer in 4th, Steve Grissom in 5th, and Joe Ruttman 6th. Randy Tolsman drove to a 7th place finish, finishing some 6 seconds behind Hamilton. Then it was Brian Reffner in the 8th spot. Last year's winner, Jimmy Hensley, drove to a 10th place finish. He was followed by Houston, the last driver to complete all 250 laps.
That gives us 2 wins, 2 seconds for the year. I mean, we're leading the points. Can't be disappointed about it. Could have finished worse than that, but you know, once you get the taste of victory, you want it.
That's a great day for us. I thought we could have got Mike there at the end, but Setzer was breathing down my neck, and I had to drive offense and defense. So 3rd's good. We're just clicking the points away.
We came a long ways. We started a long ways back and made a few adjustments. We were a little tight in the center all day and never quite got it completely fixed, but you know, the Mopar team done a great job, you know, to get us up that far.
The main thing is we had a good truck, and we passed some trucks. So from there, as I say, you know, we'll take us top 5 and go on to Portland, and then see if we can't get a win on a road course.
Good gracious. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, there's guys 4 and 5 laps down running like they was driving for the lead. I mean, it was trucks, you know, running into the side of you, right down the straightaway. And of course, that's truck racing, so I guess we need to get used to it.
Randy Renfro heads up the next group of drivers with the 13th place finish. Greg Biffle wound up in the 14th spot. Joe Gibbs' son Coy Gibbs drove to an 18th place finish, completing 247 of the 250 laps. And that was tops of the rookies competing in the race. Marty Houston drove to a 19th place finish in the 75 truck. Rookie Carlos Contreras wound up in the 22nd spot. Rookie of the year point leader Kurt Busch finished in the 23rd spot. In his first ever visit to the Martinsville Speedway, he had a couple of spins. Conrad Burr rounds out the top 25. The action is starting to get cranked up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as teams began preparing for next month's Indianapolis 500 by testing at the Brickyard. Marlo Klein dug out of the snow in Nazareth to make it back to Indy and has more on how Sunday's kart postponement will affect one of the teams planning to compete in this year's 500.
After Sunday's snow out in Nazareth, Chip Ganassi's return to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Memorial Day weekend will be busier than he originally planned. Juan Montoya and Jimmy Vasser will run Saturday, May 27th in Nazareth, then fly to Indy that night to run the 500 on Sunday.
It's going to be interesting, but I think for us it's going to be kind of excitement, get there, aggressive racetrack like Nazareth, it's 200-mile race, so you got to really push it all the way.
And then to come here, you have to run 500 miles here the next day.
It's plenty of time to get used to it, 500-mile races, you got to, I drove to there and felt really comfortable with the car. It felt pretty simple. Everything, all the basics felt pretty simple, so it's really good.
We're actually going to use the over-the-wall crew at both places. So there are a bunch of guys from the test team and that have been putting this deal together. But we are going to supplement it from the guys from Nazareth. So it's going to put a little different kink in the deal.
It's probably not the optimum thing, but it's what we have to deal with. So it'll be kind of cool, really.
While Target Chip Ganassi Racing is just getting reacquainted with the Speedway, the other veterans are getting their first taste of what the 2000 engine and chassis specs will do in this 2.5-mile oval.
Doesn't seem like it's slowing us down too much at all. For us, it's a lot of new variables. It's the 3.5-liter engine, the new Dallara, Firestone tires, and of course different conditions than we've been here before at. So it's really like a completely new ball game.
Indy's the hardest track to master because you have to push the car to get to the setup, and when you're going down the track at 230 miles an hour, you're looking at a square corner, you're looking right at the wall. I mean, it weighs on your mind pretty heavily, so you have to really push it to get to it, but once you get to it, it makes it a lot better, so we have some work in front of us.
This is the 22nd month of construction for September's Formula One race. The drivers believe the construction has made very little difference to the track surface, but their sight lines have been slightly altered.
I think some of the sight lines are only different probably in two. And it's neat just to sort of see all the construction that's going on. And there is a little bit of dust out there right now, which is, I think, probably to be expected because of the wind right now, early spring. So I think by the time we come back here in May, with the construction starting to slow down, the wind tailing off, we'll be okay.
They've actually built a berm for the pedestrians and onlookers to stand on, which affects your sight through turn 3 a little bit. But other than that, no, it's really, it's just like business as usual.
One driver conspicuously absent from this open test is Alan Sir Jr. Gallus Racing decided to test in Las Vegas this week to get ready for that race. Instead, that team will test here at the end of the month. In Indianapolis, Marlo Klein, ESPN.
Thank you, Marlo. Greg Ray led the way in testing on Monday with a fast lap of 220.713 miles an hour. Juan Montoya turned the second fastest lap at 219.78. But check out how close these guys are running. Mark Dismore, Eddie Cheever, Jeff Ward, Jimmy Vasser, all joining Montoya in the 219-mile-an-hour range. In other open-wheel notes, Brian Herta has been selected to fill in for the injured Shinji Nakano in the Walker Racing ride at both Long Beach and Rio. Herta is under contract still to Forsyth Championship Racing and is under loan to Derek Walker's team. Still to come on RPM tonight, the action heated up on the new quarter mile in Las Vegas over the weekend. And when we come back, the rough and tumble racing at the Martinsville Speedway.
RPM Tonight is brought to you by the Home Depot, the official home improvement warehouse of NASCAR.
Rusty Wallace headed into Sunday's Goodies Body Pain 500 at Martinsville as the odds-on favorite. He was on the pole. He had a dominant car. He made up 2 laps during the race to recapture the lead. But he didn't win. Mark Martin did, even though he knew Saturday his chances weren't really that good.
I don't know if I'll ever win another race. I've told you that for 5 years, and I'll keep telling you that. I don't know how. We've won 31 of them, and I don't know if I'll ever win another one, but, we'll keep trying.
While he never expects to win, Martin's victory at Martinsville may have been the most unexpected of his career. With 63 laps to go, the caution was out, and the leaders pitted. With that, Mark Martin inherited the lead. The car was not great, but it was good enough to hang on from there.
We didn't run that good. Certainly we're junk yesterday, and this is such an odd racetrack that Goodyear had such a good tire that we were able to, get the lead there and with older tires and hang on to it. I was just shooting for a top 10 finish. I never dreamed in a million years we could win this race.
As it turned out, I think they wound up putting many aspects of Frankie and Jeff Burton's setup in the car, and that wound up being the thing that made the car really strong today.
As Martin led, the cars behind him turned the race into a demolition derby. It had been a constant theme in the race, but many teams had enough time to recover from earlier incidents. But when it happens late, teams naturally get mad. Some express that anger, others pretend it didn't happen.
I don't remember that.
But there was one incident that shook up the top 5. With 7 to go, sentimental favorite John Andretti in the famous 43 was running third and got spun by Michael Waltrip.
You know, you get hit and you get spun out. You know, people, it happens all day long, but there's no excuse for it. You know, I'm responsible for not running into somebody, just as if everyone else were that responsible, we wouldn't have had any cautions today. But I made a mistake and spun out the guy running third.
The incident drew the ire of the King, who had a few words for Waltrip after the race.
They just said, "We're mad at you." And I said, "I understand."
Of course, everyone but the winner wanted to do better Sunday, but most had to admit that if you came away with any decent finish at all, it was a good day.
You won't get that lucky that many times. We were fortunate to finish where we finished. Again, great job by Frank, but we were fortunate.
I was in all kinds of wrecks, but didn't get torn up too bad. And, you know, they were just spinning and crashing all around me. And I was getting hit from behind. I was hitting guys from behind. It was typical Martinsville, pretty crazy.
Do you race this track or do you survive this track?
Both. Because you better be racing, because I can guarantee you there's 42 other guys that are racing their ass off out there, and if you're laying back and riding around, they're going to go by.
Flat, concrete, half-mile track with 43 3,500-pound race cars. You got what they're looking for.
Just in case you've forgotten, here's a look at the 8 different drivers who have won this year. Among the drivers missing from this list who won last year, teammates Terry Labonte and Jeff Gordon. Both of those drivers will give it their all this coming weekend at Talladega to extend the streak to 9. Benny Parsons has made it back to the studio after working Monday's Truck Series race at Martinsville. Professor, thanks for hustling back. But first, we want to talk about the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. 8 different winners in the first 8 races. Next week at Talladega, though, I would expect that streak to stop because the Dale and Dale show, Dale Jarrett, Dale Earnhardt, they always run well at the restrictor plates.
Yeah, I would think those two guys, obviously the last couple of races there, last year, Earnhardt won the races, and Jarrett, I think, won the race, the fall race before that. So those two guys should end this streak of 8 different winners.
Well, after winning the race at Martinsville on Sunday, Mark Martin said that he stole it. Now, it'd be easy to second-guess Rusty Wallace for coming in and pitting with about 65 laps to go or something, give Mark the lead. But pit strategy is a huge part of this racing business, isn't it?
It's just unbelievable how these things work out. I mean, Mark Martin and those guys, when they made a pit stop and Rusty and those guys stayed out, well, Rusty and those guys had only pitted just a few laps before that. And so Mark and those guys pit, and then just 25 laps later, the caution flag comes out. They decide to stay on the racetrack. Well, I think 5 of those guys decided to stay on the racetrack, and Rusty and that whole entourage comes in the pits, and they just never could fight their way back to the front. I think Jeff Gordon probably did the best job, finishing in 3rd or 4th.
Rusty clearly had the strongest car during the race, but it wasn't strong enough to work its way through traffic there at the end. Now, we always talk about just how close the field is at Martinsville, what, top 36 separated by a quarter of a second. That just illustrates that fact, doesn't it?
Exactly. All these cars run exactly the same speed, and there's nothing you can do. You pull up behind some guy, there's something you can do. You can try to knock them out of the way. We saw that 17 times yesterday, or 17 caution flags, and some of those cautions were caused by somebody trying to knock somebody out of the way. But really and truly, when you do that, they retaliate, number 1, and number 2, you might end up in the crash.
A couple of teams got penalized because of the violating that new pit road rule where you got to take the right side tires over, including Jeff Gordon. Now, what do you think about that rule, and do you think we're going to see a new interpretation on a 2-tire change?
What do you mean interpretation? The rule is plain as day. The rule says that the right side tires will be on the inner half of the pit box when the car leaves the pit box. Now, what's so difficult about that?
So it's plain and simple, just in black and white right there.
Yeah, I mean, I read the rule, and it said black and white that the tires will be over in the inside half of the pit box when the car leaves. It didn't say anything about right sides or 4 tires or anything else.
Good rule, though, isn't it?
It's a fantastic rule. Did you see pit road yesterday? Just as clean as it could be, and all those guys trying to get around the other cars, there wasn't a tire in the way to be knocked out in front of another car.
Now, you mentioned 17 caution flags. That tied the record for Martinsville. In fact, for me, I mean, I've been going to Martinsville for nearly 20 years now, and I can't remember the guys being that impatient and wrecking each other. What was up with that?
You know, I'm trying to think, was the full moon or something? I mean, it looked like a night race at Bristol because but again, it's just the fact that all the cars are the same speed. We talked about that just a moment ago. The cars are the same speed. 36 cars qualified within less than a third of a second. And if you get hooked up and you're out there with better tires, you run across someone, you just can't come off the corner and drive under them and pass them. You have to wait for those cars to slip. And anymore, the drivers are so good, John, they don't slip and make those mistakes they used to make.
And it was exciting nonetheless. Benny, stick around. We'll talk more a little bit later on. Next on RPM Tonight, the King is back on top in the NHRA. National Hot Rod Association christened the brand new strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in style. Over the weekend, we picked up the action in the Pro Stock Bikes final. Tony Mullen in the near lane taking on Angel Sealing. And it's Angel getting off the line in good style, cruising to the win with a 7.405 elapsed time, top speed 177.28 miles an hour. But it's Mullen in the point lead by just one over Sealing after 2 of 14 events on the season. David Schultz, who won the season opener, sits third in the points, followed by Matt Hines. Craig Treble and Antoine Brown round out the top 6. In Pro Stocks, it was the other professor, Warren Johnson, in the near lane, taking on Jeg Coughlin in the far lane. And this one was close, but Coughlin pulled it off with a 7.072 second elapsed time, 195.56 miles an hour. Coughlin now has 3 wins on the season, leads Johnson in the point standings by 47 points. Mark Pollock holds down the 3rd spot after the 4th of 23 events on the schedule. Ron Krischer, Troy Coughlin, and the kid, Richie Stevens, complete the top 6. John Force's teammate Tony Pedregon in the far lane went up against Jim Epler in the funny car final, and it's Epler taking the win, 4.983, 302.21 miles an hour.
I'll tell you what, for this WWF team, Castrol, the major sponsor of WWF anyway, it was a win-win situation. But we just got to make this exciting. We got, WWF against Castrol, and we got a lot of other tough teams out there. But inaugural race here, and we won her.
It was Epler's first win of the season and moves him into the 5th spot in the point standings. Jerry Tolliver, though, still leads the way. In the points, the lead shrank to just 31 over Tony Pedregon. Finally, in the Top Fuel final, Joe Amato in the near lane. Kenny Bernstein, the king, wiggles. But it's Bernstein pulling ahead and taking the win line with a 4.907 second elapsed time.
New race car, first time we've ever gone down the track with it this weekend. Winner with it, we're tickled to death about that too. But you couldn't dominate on a racetrack like this. Being this hot, 90-degree weather, altitude, everything it takes. It's a tough game out here. My guys just did a great job. That's the deal. These guys right here, all the team.
Bernstein is 3rd in the point standings, 56 behind the leader Tony Schumacher. Gary Selzy also has 1 win on the season, holds down the 2nd spot in the standings. Amato is 4th, followed by Larry Dixon and Doug Coletta. Coming up next on RPM Tonight, will the rules changes save the racing at Talladega this weekend? The NASCAR Winston Cup stars head to the Talladega Superspeedway this weekend, and we have all the action covered for you. NASCAR has mandated a smaller restrictor plate while also giving teams back control of their front shock absorbers. See what kind of a difference it makes in first-round qualifying Friday starting at 4 Eastern, right here on ESPN2. Benny Parsons is back with us. And BP, what kind of a difference do you think those rules changes are going to make?
I think the cars will be a little bit slower come qualifying time because they did take about 20 horsepower. That reducing that restrictor plate, folks, is 20 horsepower according to most of the guys that I talked to. So I think it'll slow the cars down a little bit qualifying, but now the teams will get to play with those front shocks and springs. I think in race trim, that'll bring the speed back up in the cars.
There was very little passing on the racetrack in the last restrictor plate race, the Daytona 500 is?
None.
Well, okay, well, none. Basically,
there's no
none.
passing.
So that's why they made the rule, right?
Exactly, because, that's what this deal is all about, cars going by each other and passing. And anyone could realize we have a problem, so they made a rule change, and they'll try this. If this doesn't work, come July the 4th, there'll be something else, some other rule to try to get some more passing.
You worked the Truck Series race at Martinsville on Monday. Anything stand out?
Well, Bobby Hamilton was doggone strong. And Joey Arrington, I didn't say anything on the telecast, and I'm really sorry about that. Joey Arrington builds engines for the Bobby Hamilton team, for Joe Rudman and Bobby Hamilton. Joey Arrington lives in Martinsville, Virginia. That's where his business is located. His dad, Buddy Arrington, raced out of Martinsville, Virginia for all these years. He won a race finally at Martinsville Speedway, his home racetrack. Joey, way to go.
Mike Wallace finished second. So, Benny, that's in 5 races, 2 wins, 2 second-place finishes. He's the points leader. They've got that momentum going, don't they?
Yeah, these guys right now are for real. Mike, Timmy, all the crew, these guys for real. Great pit stops. The truck is good and solid. The engine program out of Rusty Wallace's operation, Roger Penske's, it's good and solid. And Mike Wallace now has that confidence that he needs to go out and do the job.
So when you have all of those ingredients together, is it like a snowball rolling down the hill? It just keeps getting bigger?
Right down the hill, but you know, we've seen it before. There's always a rock there that snowball can't hit. I mean, that momentum is fantastic, but it's such a fragile thing, and it doesn't take that much to break it.
Randy LaJoie won the crash-filled Busch Series race Saturday at Nashville. He spun out early in that race, Benny, but yet came back to win. I guess that just goes to show you, don't ever give up.
Never give up, but when he spun out, John, that got him out of the big wreck. You know, if he's back behind all these guys, you know, the big wreck at Talladega one time, I remember I made a pit stop, and I'm leaving the pits, through the green flag, and I said, man, I'm a half lap down, I'll be lapped in 5 laps. Had a big wreck in turn 1, 2 laps later, and I was over in turn 3, so I missed the big wreck. Sometimes you're just lucky, and LaJoie Saturday was lucky.
You mentioned Talladega. That's where the Busch teams race this week. Now, Kevin Harvick and Ron Hornaday, the rookies, ran very strong at Daytona to start the year. We always talk about Talladega is a good place to pick up your first win. What about for one of those 2 guys?
Yeah, I think those guys could win. Certainly, Harvick and Hornaday are quality race car drivers. I told you before, Harvick was a great race car driver, and he missed the show at Rockingham, but I think he's shown everyone that he is a doggone good race car driver, and he can win at Talladega, and so can Hornaday, because, you know, and Hornaday, he's just, you know, he's got to be living large right now, because this is exactly what he's wanted to do all of his life.
Yeah, and last year there was a great finish in the Busch race, so it should be a good one. Benny, thank you very much for hustling back here, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, John.
NASCAR ran its first race at Talladega in September of 1969. Richard Brickhouse won that race, his only career Winston Cup victory. That's Monday's Fast Fact. We'll be right back. RPM Tonight is almost always on at the same time this week, but you better get your paper and pencil handy and write this down. Tuesday, we're back on at 6:30 Eastern. Open Wheel Wednesday comes your way at 6. Then it's back to 6:30 Eastern for both Thursday and Friday. Finally, Tim Fedewa has a new crew chief. 50-year-old Billy Nazowitz makes his debut with the C.C. Welliver Busch Series team at this weekend's race in Talladega. Nazowitz has worked in racing for some 26 years, serving as crew chief for the late Richie Evans during his run of 8 national championships in the modified division. We'll see you back here Tuesday night at 6:30 Eastern. We will check in with Jan Binkis for the latest from the Kart FedEx Championship Series as it prepares to visit Southern California, Long Beach this weekend. Marlo Klain will report on rookie testing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Randy LaJoie, winner of a wild Busch race in Nashville. We'll see here. Once again, we'll see you at 6:30 Tuesday night. Good night, everybody.
RPM Tonight is a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network. Go.com.